Welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation with Simon and Brian. How are you this evening, Simon?
I'm great. I feel like I'm in vacation right now. I haven't raced last weekend. I've been resting. I'm actually back to full scale training. I did strength training yesterday. I did intervals today. Brian, you would be proud
What?
of me. I
Oh
know,
my
right?
gosh.
I don't remember the last time I've done these things. It might have been like in April or something like that. So
I know you're
if
usually like you're on the recovery and then you're on the taper. I mean, that's basically that's your 2 week cycle between races.
it's been the cycle, so it feels good now that it's been basically 2 weeks without any races. Of course, right now it's planning season. I'm thinking about what I'm doing next, and especially July and August. I'm like, damn, I might run one every week. So I'll have to lower my expectation a little bit. But how about yourself? How are you recovering still from Moab, and how are your knees?
My knees are still good. They're actually really good. My Achilles is actually doing well too. I did schedule an ultrasound that I'll get this weekend, and then I have an MRI scheduled for around Thanksgiving, just to kind of see what's going on in there and kind of see what the treatment might be. Um, at our camp at Aravaipa, one of the friends that we met in our small camp next to the camper there um, is a doctor here in Colorado, and we've been communicating about my Achilles. She knew exactly what it was, and gave me the rundown of the testing I needed to get done. And then from the results of those testings, we'll make a plan on how to attack it structurally for strength training and other purposes. So just getting a better grasp of what's going on there. I did run today though in the snowstorm. Um, it's election day today, to put a timestamp on this recording. And between the snowstorm, my little one, my 10-year-old daughter, was home for the last 2 days sick, and the dog needing to get out. I decided to go for a 3 mile run in a driving snowstorm. That's how bad I needed to get out. So yeah, so my knees are doing good. I'm doing well. I too am resting pretty good, actually, almost too good. I'm afraid to step on the scale because I keep eating like I'm training, but I'm not training. So that's where I'm at. But it's the first week of November. It's fine. I'll put some structure into it when I'm ready, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's the off season, and the off season is not necessarily rest season, is build back season, and this is starting right now and making a plan. But speaking of plan, we had a great discussion with our guest today, who has had quite a build up to go to the Paralympic twice. Which is extremely impressive. He's a much better athlete than both of us combined, which is
Mm-hmm. That's the
intimidating to
truth.
say the
That's the
least.
truth. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great chat. I mean, the guy is super chatty, super positive, and I myself I learned a lot from that discussion.
Yeah, that's right, Simon. Our guest today is Kyle Coon, two-time Paralympian, was in Tokyo and most recently Paris. He shares his journey with us, from being born with sight, and then losing that sight at an early age. It's an amazing story. It's the triumph over tragedy. Finding a different way. You know, pulling that audible out and making different decisions, and making the right ones. And Kyle's made a lot of great decisions. He's a great guy. I've had the privilege of trying to run with him. He'll call me when on his rest days and see if I'm able to help him, and be a guide for him down the bike path or in a neighborhood. It's a good thing he likes to talk because I'm just trying to catch my breath usually. So that's the way our runs go.
So he stays in zone two while you're basically doing threshold run.
Yeah. I'm in a steady state effort for like 40 minutes, and Kyle's just telling me all about his summer of running and living at the Olympic Training Center. So yeah, that's pretty much how our runs go. His parents live near me, in Carbondale, Colorado, here, in the Western Slope, and so that's how we connect through the run group, through the running store here in our area. So It's great connecting with Kyle always. He's got a great book out. I'm halfway through. I was telling him I'm halfway through the audio version of it that his uncle, I'm using air quotes, his uncle narrates. It's his father's buddy from the Marine Corps, and those Marine Corps guys are pretty tight, and so he's an uncle to Kyle. But the book is called "Discovering a Life Without Limits: How Cancer Took My Sight, Blindness Gave Me Vision, and the Mountains Let Me Live." It's a great read so far, and I'm really enjoying it. Looking forward to you guys checking out this episode and kind of hearing how Kyle's story. Without further ado, here's Kyle Coon. Enjoy. Hey, Kyle, thanks for taking some time out of here this evening and sitting down and talking with us. How are you doing?
I can't complain too much, and even if I did complain, no one's here around to listen. So yeah, who cares? Nah, I'm doing great. It's great to be
You're
here. Thanks
setting the
for.
tone for the episode. My God, I like that.
Nah, I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to chat with us about your story, your history with sport. Yeah, it's a great story. I've known you through the valley here. Um, your parents live in the same valley that I live in currently,
Yep,
and you come out and visit them every now and then. We met through, I think, Run Club at Independence Run and Hike, to give them a little plug, the running store in Carbondale, Colorado,
yep.
and I've ran with you a couple times. I've tried to keep up with you is actually how I should rephrase that, because you were quicker than I am, and you amused me by doing my interval workout one time too. I remember as well.
Yeah, I remember that run because I was actually I was getting ready to go and try to run it was the first time that I was trying to actually target a half marathon in the middle of training for in the middle of training, for triathlon and stuff. It was a super long season. It was the triathlon season started in like March, and then World Championships wasn't until the end of November, and so I needed something in the middle of the season to kind of break it up, and I was just trying to get outside and run, and I happened to be in the valley for a week or two, and you were like, hey, I gotta, I'm doing like this Moab 240 thing, and I want to run some threshold intervals, and I was like, that sounds like fun. Let's go do it, and it actually it worked out really well because it happened. It wound up being like just a like 10 seconds per mile or something slower than my half marathon pace. So it was a good last little threshold workout for me to go and rip off a 125 half marathon. So it was fun.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, it was. Sounds like it was good for both of us.
Yeah,
Yeah, I always appreciate when you come hit me up and get me out the door, and we get to run down the bike path. Or I think that time we ran around Blue Lake neighborhood,
sounds about
and
right.
so yeah, yeah. So always a great time, Kyle. I appreciate it. Let's back up like a whole bunch, though. Man, you have a story. You have a story to tell, and you did tell it in your book. Um, that we'll get to in a little bit. But let's back up and talk about how you found yourself in sport, and probably even farther about that, and talk about your sight, and how you lost your sight at an early age, and just maybe just touch the highlights of it if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I was actually diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer when I was 10 months old called bilateral sporadic retinoblastoma. And it was basically this cancer that attacked both of my retinas. I had no family history. And it was a scary time for my parents. I mean, anyone out there that has kids, you can understand, the thing that's worse than, you yourself getting sick is, one of your kids getting sick, and especially when you hear something like cancer, and you know so so my parents basically they did everything they could to fight the cancer. We got connected with the best doctors that specialized in retinoblastoma, and I went through probably 5 or 6 years of pretty intensive cancer treatment, and basically I would respond really, really well to the various treatments. I mean, basically my doctors later told me that they threw the medical textbook at me, and when nothing worked. They just started making it up and seeing how I responded. So eventually, though, I would respond to the treatment, but then the cancer would come back stronger than ever. And what actually happened was the treatments did so much damage to my eyes that eventually we just had no choice but to remove them. So had my left eye removed just after I turned 5 years old. And then we were able to save my right eye for another just over a year, and had my right eye removed just before I turned 7. And so, so my parents knew that I was going to go totally blind. And so they did everything they could to prepare me, making sure that I was in school, learning to read and write in Braille, learning how to use a white cane, having all these different skills that would prepare me for being totally blind. But it's still a really tough transition, and I basically was this little 7-year-old depressed kid. I didn't want to go outside and play. I didn't want to do anything. I would just sit in my room and cry all day. Oh, woe is me. Pretty understandable.
Sure.
But my parents, my dad, was my dad's a Marine, and my mom grew up in a tough-nosed family, and so my parents were like, well, this isn't going to work. So how do we snap him out of it? And fortunately, my dad got connected through through a Rotary club. Someone had heard a gentleman speak about his totally blind son, Eric Weinmeier, and so she connected us with Ed Weinmeier, who then connected us with Eric, and I got to sit down and meet this Eric Weinmeier dude, who at the time he wasn't super famous, but he was already starting to kind of make a name for himself doing this mountain climbing thing. He was a rock climber, skier, skydiver, all that stuff. And after a couple years after I met him, he went on to become the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. And so he and I just, that first meeting, we just kind of sat down, and he told me a little bit about his story and shared with me, how, just because I was blind didn't mean I had to sit on the sidelines. And he challenged me to give rock climbing a try. So I didn't know any better, so I went out and did it. And tried out rock climbing, and then that spiraled into competitive rock climbing, which spiraled into climbing real rock outside, which spiraled into camping and hiking and backpacking, and then eventually making our way out to Colorado to start skiing, and then climbing bigger mountains, and just delving deeper and deeper down the road of adventure sport. And so yeah, that was kind of my introduction to to sport and athletics. And once I got to high school, picked up wrestling, wrestled all throughout high school and into college, and eventually came out of college and was just kind of like, well, what's next? So yeah, so that was kind of that's the skinny on my at least intro before I became an actual endurance athlete.
Sure. How old were you when you met Eric, the mountaineer?
I had to be. It was pretty shortly after I lost my sight, so I was probably 7 or 8 years old. So
Very
still,
young. Yeah.
so still really, really young. And what really helped, though, was that so Eric's dad lived about a 45-minute drive from our family, where I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. And so Eric came down to Florida a bunch. He was living in Colorado at the time, and he would come down to Florida a bunch to visit his dad. And so anytime he came down to Florida, we'd connect, and he'd share a little bit more, and he just became a mentor to me. And we just I followed his journeys of adventure and all the stuff that he was doing as he made more of a name for himself in the in the newspapers and the magazines and all that. And then the the fledgling internet, what little was out there at, in the late 90s, early 2000s. But yeah, so I was very young, and then reading, Eric published and released his autobiography, and that gave me more insight into living life as an adventure athlete as well. So
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely formative years when all of that happened. I'm curious, and I'm sorry, that's the medical guy in me. You said it was a bilateral for your eyes. Was there a risk, and did you have a lot of follow-up later on, risk of other cancer popping up if it's bilateral? I'm just
yeah,
not familiar.
yeah. So there's so I definitely am always cognizant of you know any weird lumps or bumps or anything anywhere on my
Yeah.
body. And I actually about a little more than 10 years ago, I did actually have a secondary cancer pop up. So I actually had a sebaceous gland carcinoma pop up on my upper right eyelid, which for someone, I think I was like 22, 23 years old at the time. Doctors are like, sebaceous gland carcinoma, that's usually connected like colon cancer, or we see that in older adults. So they ran some tests. We cut the carcinoma out. Basically had to remove my entire right upper eyelid to get rid of it. But they basically said what probably caused it was a result of a lot of the external gamma beam radiation therapy that I did as a
So you think it
little
was
kid.
treatment related?
So yeah, so a lot of it, and we knew that.
Yeah.
My doctors, prepped us, early on, saying like, look, there's more than a 50% chance that you could have some secondary cancers pop up as a result of all this treatment, because this when I was going through all my treatment, it was the early to mid 90s. It was we didn't know as much as we know now. So it's 20, 30 years is a lifetime in medicine. So
Yeah, which I mean, yeah, definitely the medical field has definitely evolved, but still, it's not like you want cancer nowadays neither. But I feel that must maybe also have changed your perspective on life, because there's always this thing hanging that you're not so sure. Or did you move past that?
I wouldn't say that I've moved past it, but I do think that I embrace life, and I embrace the challenges that come along with life. Because life is meant to be lived, and like I now seek out adventure and push my body and my mind to their limits. And I try to find the limits of my body and my mind, and then I try to push beyond them and expand them, just like any athlete does. And I don't necessarily I don't necessarily think that I'm like fearful of living cancer, or I have FOMO, or fear of missing out or anything. But I've embraced this mindset of, let's live an adventurous life. And I think it's a lot healthier to live. I'm not gonna fear tomorrow, or fear yesterday. I'm gonna try to do my best to live in the present.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting story, Kyle. You have this setback, before you're 10 years old. Gosh, you're not even 7 at some of those stages, and losing half your sight and then the full sight. And then you come out the other side and you have these experiences that are probably deeper and way more meaningful than anybody in their teens to 20s years of age. To find rock climbing and a mentor like Eric, and just to have these different experiences that were different than how I grew up, I guess. I didn't have all those experiences myself, either on the setbacks or the accolades of climbing mountains or rock climbing, and kind of getting into competitive sports. So, it's just it's admirable that you're able to find hope in the darkest moments of childhood.
I think it's look, we're at some point we're all going to face challenges. We're all going to face a deep, we're all going to climb into a deep dark hole at some point. I you know blindness as a going totally blind as a little kid wasn't the it might have been one of the first deep dark holes that you know I had to climb out of, but it certainly wasn't the last. I've had many others that I've had to climb out of since then, and I'm sure there's going to be many more down the road. So I do believe that you know our past adversities, they do help build us up, and they do help mold us and allow us to learn from you know challenging situations, and it allows us to be learn resilience, and be able to bounce back stronger than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that the adversity you faced, you can let it defeat you, or you can go through it and accept that sometimes you go in dark place, but build up resilience from that. Do you think that has helped you in your sporting career as an athlete? I don't know. My words are
Yeah,
failing me.
yeah, no, it's definitely helped me in my athletic career.
Mm-hmm.
I, I I like to say that I'm kind of an accidental elite athlete. This was not my intention to to pursue Paralympic sport. Uh,
What was your
by
intention?
Look, when I graduated from college, I can fully admit I was a very arrogant 21-year-old. I thought I was going to be like the next big entrepreneur or CEO or something, not knowing a thing about business.
Mm-hmm.
But as a teenager, as a young kid, I had garnered a lot of attention being the young blind phenom mountain climber, rock climber, wrestler dude. So
Mm-hmm.
I had been on national television. I had traveled around the world. I had done some pretty cool stuff, and it gave me a rather lofty opinion of myself. And so when I graduated from college, I decided I was going to apply for every job CEO and above. And quickly climbed my way down the corporate ladder until I looked up and found that I had fallen off the bottom rung, hit the ground, dug that nice deep dark hole, and now I was looking up at a hole that was over my head. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing here. And it had been a year since I had graduated college, and I was just like, well, I gotta fix something. So I decided to just get my body back into shape, and maybe after that, my mind would follow along, and then maybe eventually the money would the money situation would figure itself out as well. And so I just decided that I was going to try to find someone to run with, and because running was the one thing that I could afford to do, and it was it was something that didn't seem that difficult or challenging. And it was also something that growing up I had hated. Like I hated running growing up. I did not want to be a runner. Running was always a punishment for us. So it was a very unique situation though, and but it was a challenge, and it was something to distract me from uh, the the struggles that I was having as an early 20s out of college kid. And I just the guy that I wound up running with initially happened to be a triathlete. He told me that running was dumb and that I should do triathlon, and well, my dumb self believed him, and so I decided to throw swimming and biking, on top of running, and then I looked, and I fell in love with that process. I fell in love with the putting the puzzle together of triathlon, and I became fascinated with this idea of endurance sport in general, and just figuring out how to put that puzzle together. And I very slowly got faster over the course of about 3 or 4 or 5 years. And before too long, I looked up and I had done 2 or 3 Ironmans, and I'd actually gotten pretty fast. It was just kind of like, well, what's next? Like, I could just keep getting faster at Ironman. I could, venture off into the trail, more into the trail running and mountain running scenes as an athlete, or I could see what the Paralympics held, and try to compete against the best and fastest guys in the world. And so I decided to go down that path. So I was definitely an accidental elite athlete.
Let's continue on that story, because it's a great segue. Like, how did you how do you approach becoming a Paralympic athlete in general? Like, from being just not just an age group racer, or maybe just a podium guy at some events. What does that transition look like, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so it's, I'm very fortunate that when I got into, when I made that transition, Paralympic triathlon was still very young. So triathlon was, Paralympic triathlon was introduced to the Paralympics in 2016. So 2016 was the first time that paratriathlon was contested at the Paralympic Games, and then they only had a handful of competitive categories in Rio, and then they expanded the roster of events that would be contested in Tokyo. And so men's visually impaired triathlon made its debut at the Tokyo 2020 Games, and so it just so happened that I was in position to, we were about 2 years out from 2020, and since I had kind of started getting a little quicker and a little faster at, things like Ironman and 70.3 and, age group races across the country, I was looking around trying to figure out ways to just improve. And I went to a talent identification camp for USA Triathlon, and one of the coaches there saw some talent in me and pulled me aside and said, "Hey, men's visually impaired triathlon is going to make its debut in Tokyo, and you seem to have a knack for this sport. You seem to be pretty good. I think you could improve more. I think you should apply. They're gonna open up spots at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. We're expanding the resident team there for paratriathlon. I think you should apply." And so I said, "Well, why the heck not?" Submitted my application, had an interview, and the coach with the coach and the high performance manager of USA Triathlon at the time, and they thought I was a good candidate and a good fit. And I just kind of slid right into the program. So like for me, it was quite it was, again, just putting myself in the right place at the right time, making connections with the right people, and just having a willingness to pick up and go somewhere. Move to Colorado Springs. Just having an open mind to knowing that I didn't know everything, and maybe if I was coached by one of the best coaches in the world, I could improve even more. And that definitely happened.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. I think you're underselling yourself, though. For sure. I mean, you had to have the opportunity, but you also had to have the talent and dedication and work ethic to get to the level where you are. So
Well,
it's not just being lucky and
I
stumbling upon that, right? Like
Sure.
you did the work.
I look, and that is one thing I will give myself credit for, is that I do work extremely hard. I've always prided myself on my work ethic. I try to outwork anybody and everybody. Talent, we can split hairs on what talent is all day, because I think my first ever 5K I ran in like 30 something minutes, and I've nearly halved that since. So like now I run, now off the bike I run a 5K in under 18 minutes. Like, so it's definitely, and when I went to the when I moved to the training center, I was only I think my best 5K was just over 22 minutes. And that was in 2019. And, so it's definitely been, I went from someone who 10 years ago could, barely run a 30-minute 5K to, someone who now runs, 5K in under 18 minutes. That 10-year progression, that did take work. It took a lot of work and dedication, and time to. You have to dedicate yourself to your craft. So that was something that I definitely learned through being a high performance athlete over the last 6 years.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. I do have a broad question. I think people might. So I'm very naive on these things. I don't know how it works, but you mentioned there were different categories for the triathlon at the Paralympic. How does that work?
Sure. Yeah. So at the Paralympics, we classify people based on their disabilities, so that you're racing or competing against people of similar impairments, with similar impairments. So like it doesn't make total sense to have someone, with 2 legs and no eyes racing against someone who's a single leg above the knee amputee. It just, in some sports, it might work, but in a sport like triathlon, where the person, with the above knee amputation is dealing with multiple prosthetics, and the person who's totally blind or visually impaired is has to use a guide. There's just, it just doesn't make sense. And so to level the playing field and have it be fair across the board, or as fair as we can get it, there's a classification system. And so I only race against men who are blind or visually impaired. So there's a spectrum of visual impairment ranging from your best corrected vision of 2200 to total blindness. And so I fall into the total blindness class, and but I still compete and race against guys who are have a little bit of usable vision left. So, and then in that case, we do what's called an interval start system. So I get a slight little head start on them, because look, someone, more often than not, someone who can see a little bit is gonna be faster than someone who can't see at all. In general, it doesn't always happen. And so we have various classes, and in triathlon we have the wheelchair class, which is called paratriathlon wheelchair, and then you have severe lower limb or neurological impairments, and all the way up to upper extremity impairments. So and everything in between. So I think in triathlon right now we have six different sport classes, or 6 different medal events. And some of those medal events are divided into subclasses. So it gets very complicated very quickly, but that's kind of the that's the best explanation I can give in less than a 3-minute.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so, for sure, there's a lot of thinking that went behind that, and then explaining it would take time. But of course, it makes sense to some extent, or to a large extent. People took time to think about how to make it fair. So I appreciate the explanation here. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Kyle, prior to walking onto the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, were you coaching yourself, or did you have a coach to get you there, to help get you there, like as a precursor when you were the age group racer, racing for podiums and stuff like that?
So, kind of.
Okay.
Yes to all of the above. So I was part of a triathlon club in 2015 and into 2016, but wasn't getting super personalized coaching. And then when I moved to I actually moved to moved to Carbondale, moved to the Valley at the end of 2016, and at that point, I really I didn't have the money to afford a triathlon coach. So I just kind of took what I had learned and coached myself for about a year. And, I read books, I read articles, you know, talked to triathlete friends, I talked to triathlon coaches and just, people that kind of knew the sport, and coached myself to my second Ironman finish, at the end of 2017. And then I had this crazy idea that, well, if I could, go from being a 16-hour Ironman to a sub 12-hour Ironman in 1 year of coaching myself, what could I do if I actually hired a coach that knew what the heck they were doing and could prioritize my training and give me an actual plan?
Sure.
And what could I do if I actually followed that plan and eliminated the stress of actually trying to plan everything out myself. So I went out and found a coach. So I found a triathlon coach, Leslie Patterson, who I hired at the beginning of 2018. She was a 5-time off-road triathlon world champion, and I was also pretty successful on the road for triathlon. But just this tough, gritty little Scottish lady who was her nickname was the Scottish Rocket when she was racing full time. Just someone who it was a 4-letter word coming out of her mouth every 3 or 4 words. Just a little spitfire of a human being, and just tough as nails, and did not so my kind of person who just was not going to put up with my excuses of why I didn't get training in. And she taught me how to be tough. She taught me how to, be tough when it came to racing and, training. And, she coached me remotely. And then when the opportunity to move to the training center came up, I called Leslie, and she was like, if you don't take that opportunity, I'm firing you as my athlete, because it's too good an opportunity to go, and you have to go on and, continue learning. I've taught you everything that I can to get to this point. I could keep training you and we could make this work, but I think there's better coaches, better resources there at the training center. And so I took Leslie's advice and went and learned from some of the best coaches in the world at the training center.
Had Leslie worked with blind athletes before?
So she knew some blind and visually impaired athletes, but she had never coached them, one-on-one before. So I think I was her first, blind athlete that she specifically worked with. But the thing was, she didn't make any exceptions, or anything. We talked about like, okay, how could we deliver the training sessions? How could I make sure that my training got uploaded to Training Peaks? Could I use Training Peaks to at least read the workouts? And what equipment was I using that she could make sure that I was executing the training and hitting the right powers on the bike, or doing the correct run mileage or run volume. And I was also swimming and all that stuff. So it was just communication. It was communication between coach and athlete. It was coach asking questions. It was me being honest with my coach, and then me also being curious and asking questions of my coach. And so it was because when we break it down, if we think about it, and this is something that I've learned just over 10 years of being involved in the endurance space, is that there is no secret to endurance training. Whether you want to run a mile or run a 200 miler, the training is actually remarkably similar, and the principles are all the same. It's the relationship that you have between yourself and your coach, whether it is an external coach coaching you or you're coaching yourself. and it's how you balance that relationship, and it's how curious you are, and how much you can allow your body to take, and how much recovery you can get. It's so, like, there's no secret to training. It's all out there. We all train remarkably similarly. There's just little nuances throughout, and we hire coaches to help us figure out those nuances.
Yeah, well, I think, the way we train, and we talked about research in cancer and the development of medicine. I think the way we train has evolved too, and the way we understand fueling. And I think a
Sure.
coach can be a little bit more data driven than if you're coaching yourself.
Yeah.
So I bet that at your training center, you were tip of the spear in terms of technology and being able to do these lactate measurement or understanding these things beyond the, like, when I train, I run by feeling.
Yeah.
If I feel this is too fast, I'm going to slow down. If I feel it's too slow, I'm going to go faster, which is not the most sophisticated way of doing it. It's probably
Yeah.
ballpark accurate, but if you want to perform at the same level that you are, which is amazing, you need every edge you can get, which I'm sure that's why Leslie was pushing you. Was it Leslie? Shit, I'm forgetting the name.
Yeah,
Leslie
no,
was pushing you
Leslie.
to go to that place, right?
Yeah, no,
Have a
for
more-
sure. And look, we nerded out on data. I always nerded out anytime we did I did dozens of lactate threshold and VO2 max tests at the training center, but we did not marry ourselves to the data. Data says you should be doing this, but this data point says that, but that data point says something else, and your body and your intuition as an athlete is saying something completely different. So what we did was we took the data, and it became a piece of the picture. It allowed us to see more of the picture. So we used data to confirm or basically support the training that we were doing, because yes, we absolutely, we had to know what my lactate threshold was, we had to know what my VO2 max was, but those guided our training. It didn't dictate it, if that makes sense. And and more importantly than trying to be the fastest athlete, because sometimes you don't want to go out there and run, give a be at 100%. As an elite athlete, you have to know when you can run at 80% and still win, because at the end of the day, it's the win that matters. It's not always being able to be the fastest person on the day. It is about being the fastest person on the day. It's not about blowing the competition out of the water by 10 minutes. It's as long as you whether you finish in first place by one step or 10 minutes, first place is first place. So it was about being intelligent as well.
My mom would say that the most important is to have fun.
in certain regards, yes, and
that's why nobody will remember my name. You can say it; it's okay. I'm not upset.
I would counter that with my grandpa. Always told I would always use that argument with my grandpa, and I would be like, Grandpa, like this is supposed to be fun. It's it's supposed to be you're supposed to let me win. And he's like, he would put the cards down after teaching me Go Fish or Gin Rummy or whatever, and look at me and say, you know what, Kyle, winning is fun. Learn to win.
Yeah. And to be fair, you're doing triathlon, so I understand that you cannot actually have fun doing your sport. I'm a trail runner, so I can actually enjoy it. So I understand where you're coming from.
Hey, look, I always say I got into triathlon. I didn't want to just stink at one sport. I wanted to stink at three. So
Yeah, but then you became an elite. So oops.
yeah, oopsie.
Yeah.
I'm all about, look, at the end of the day, we do sport because it's fun. Like, I wouldn't have been in I wouldn't have shifted into the elite realm or the high performance realm if I wasn't having fun doing the sport. Uh, fun to me is finding those limits and
Yeah.
pushing beyond them.
Totally, man. I'm joking,
Yeah.
but I
Oh,
understand where you're coming
absolutely,
from, right? I mean,
absolutely.
there is a joy to pushing your limit and achieving something.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying my best to be funny, but
No,
but
no,
I
it's all
totally
good, man.
understand, man.
Yep, no, but no, you ask any one of my teammates, so actually in the on the paratriathlon resident team, we had some rules. We had to give each other tough love. We had to be able to live, laugh, and love at our ridiculous experiences, and we also said that we couldn't be we said don't be a dick, and then we all said really try hard not to suck. So
Mhm.
so those were our four rules: tough love, live, laugh, love, don't be a dick, and really try hard not to suck. So we were very much a fun loving group.
That's awesome. Yeah, I hope that all my athletes at Altitude Endurance Coaching are listening because, man, you summed up the coach-athlete relationship really well with the data-driven stuff, and that it's not all about the numbers all the time.
Yeah.
I get a lot of queries about heart rate zones, and I mean we are doing trail running at a lower level. We're doing just trail running,
Yeah.
And triathletes can get kind of techie with the numbers. I remember being a triathlete and being all geeked out on the data. And I think that's what actually I enjoy about being a coach is that I still get geeked out on the data, but it's a lot easier to decipher somebody else's data instead of judging my own data, right?
Yeah, no, look, data and data, it's fun. It's fun to play with toys. Like anytime, like a new heart rate monitor or a power meter, running stride power meter or lactate monitor. Like they're fun. Toys are fun. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one wants to, you know, I mean, come on, no one used to run with GPS watches. Like we run with them because like we like to see the numbers. It's fun. And it's not all bad. Data is fun, but sometimes we let the details of the data get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a coach can do is a coach can can rein you in and be like, hey, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's zoom out here and let's remember what we're here for. And that
Mm-hmm.
was something that my coaches did a really phenomenal job at. Whether that was my triathlon coach guiding my training over the last 6 years, or my strength and conditioning uh, coach reminding me that I'm not a bodybuilder, I'm a triathlete, and so the functional strength work that we were doing is going to look different than say a track cyclist, or we're looking to support injury prevention and long term sustained performance in the sport. My triathlon coach would always tell us, look, our goal, we do have to meet some goals of like our goal is to bring home as many medals as possible, and we have to prepare you as best we can for that, but we also want to make sure that we're not breaking you and that we can
Mm-hmm.
sustain this for far beyond when you're no longer competitive at the Olympic or Paralympic level. So my coaches were very much like, this isn't, there's more to life than high performance sport. It's we have to live a good, great, we have to live a great life beyond sport as well. And it's one of those things that people ask me what I do for fun, and I'm like, well, I swim, bike, and run. Like that's what I do for fun. Like, it's what I love. It's what I enjoy. Like, my idea of fun is rolling out of bed and going to running a half marathon, or jumping into a 25K uphill trail race, or something like that. Or that's fun to me. Like, it's there's all kinds of stuff.
Let's let's move on a little bit just to more of your experience. I think you went to both Paralympic Games, I believe. And now that I'm thinking about it, you said it was 2020 at Tokyo, and I'm sure that we were in a pandemic at that time, so that probably looked a little bit strange and different. Even
Wasn't it
even as a
21?
first,
Yep.
it would have been 2020 was COVID, and that was the year that the Olympics were supposed to be, but it moved on to 21. But I'm sure it kind of put a little bit of wrench, or you had to make some adjustments to the structure, to the training, to the process. Putting things on hold and kind of stretching that season out for an extra year. And there's probably a bunch of what ifs in there. I could only imagine. Maybe you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. Yeah. So no, the COVID definitely threw a monkey wrench into everyone's plans. But I think it helped me, because I was actually, at the end of 2019, I sustained a lower back injury. So I was just kind of getting back to full-time training when COVID, shut the world down. And then early on in 2020, I had actually broken my hand. And so I was coming off, so I was actually, prepared to race at a pretty decided, at a race that was going to basically decide our Paralympic team, with a cast on my finger, because I had a compound fracture. And so I was actually kind of relieved when COVID shut the world down, for my sport, my sporting self was relieved.
Sure. Yeah.
I should clarify that. Because I was like, oh man, this actually gives me a chance to heal, recover. We don't know when racing is going to resume, but I'm in a good position. I got a chance to heal, recover, and maybe I can actually even get stronger, and faster over this time. And so that actually is what happened. The first race back in 2021, we didn't realize that the world was going to be shut down for over a year. But our first race back in 2021, I came out of the gate, guns a-blazing, and won my first major international race in 2021, and that basically locked me into going to the Paralympic Games. Went on to compete in Tokyo with. We had some fans in Tokyo.
Yeah, it was pretty small though, still.
But it was very small. It was still a pretty cool atmosphere. It was still a really amazing experience. My first Paralympic Games, but it was also extremely stressful too, because you're going through testing every day. Brian, I know that you've spent some time in Japan. They're pretty strict with their rules over there, so it was a little stressful. But coming out of Tokyo, I was locked in on. I didn't perform as well in Tokyo as I wanted to. I had some high expectations, and I was just locked in, and I was determined to give it everything I had to at least be fighting for a medal in Paris. And had some hiccups along the way, but also had some amazing successes. In the 3 years between Tokyo and Paris, and was made it to the start line in Paris, and I would say probably the best shape of my entire life. Was ready to rock and roll, and a big story around the Paris Paralympic, the Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games this year was revolved a lot around triathlon, in that we were swimming in the Seine. And swimming has been banned in the Seine for over 100 years for good reason. It's not great water quality, but Paris invested billions of dollars to clean up the Seine, and but we were still having issues with water quality all the way up to race day. And there were some days that it was the water quality was good enough to swim, and so we went and we did a swim in the Seine to check out the currents and to check out the course and everything. And then but based on weather forecasting and all that, we had the race got shifted from one day to the next to back to the previous day. It was kind of all over. And so we really were being tested with with this mindset of, look, it's triathlon is not about who can swim, bike, and run the fastest. It's about who can handle all of the unknowns, all of the ups and downs, all of the different pressures, and the who can be the most resilient and adapt to changing circumstances. And I woke up on the morning that was supposed to be race day, and my guide was getting violently sick. So he he had contracted a waterborne illness from swimming in the Seine, and we arranged for him to get to our medical team so that he could start getting fluids and getting taken care of. And then 20 minutes later, they informed everyone that the race has been postponed to tomorrow. But my guide was just not in good shape. You lose all that fluid. You can't replace it all in less than 24 hours, and you can't replace the caloric deficit and all that. And so we had to make a decision to switch to my reserve guide, and my reserve guide and I, my reserve guide is a tremendous athlete, but we hadn't dedicated as much time working on these little tiny details that just matter so much at the highest level of sport. So was able to compete, had a brilliant swim, came out of the swim second in Paris, and then we had a bit of a lackluster bike. We kept it upright. That was about our goal. Riding a tandem bike, especially on cobblestones and on a very tight technical course, you have to have been riding together just a ton leading into that event. And Marty and I just had not been riding as much together as Zach and I had been. And but then we came off the bike, and I executed one of the best runs of my triathlon career, and finished well off the podium. But the good news is I had it was just an electric atmosphere, and it was, again, one of the best executed swims of my career, one of the best executed runs of my career. And I left it all out there on the course. On the day, I gave it everything I had, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of how we handled all of the the unforeseen circumstances and the ups and downs of racing, because anything can happen. And that happens whether we're doing triathlon or 100-milers. So anything can happen, and you can bounce back, you can fall flat, any of it. And it's just how we choose to approach it. What mindset we bring to that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Congratulations first on the performance, but also on adapting last minute to a switch of guide. That is obviously a big deal. I'm curious. So you think he got sick from a practice swim? Do you know if other athletes or guide had problems too? Apparently, it sounds like maybe the water was not clean when you guys went in for the practice.
Yeah, it was definitely. There were definitely some issues with athletes got sick. Some athletes that swam got sick at different times. I myself actually got sick a couple days after the race. So I actually and then it could have been a combination of things. There were some illnesses going around the the village as well, the Paralympic village. So it could have been a combination of things, but based on some of the testing that we did and stuff, it was definitely a waterborne illness that took Zach down for the count.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. I have to ask the naive question again here, but how do you work with a guide throughout all of the events? I'm curious.
Yeah, so in triathlon, I raced at the Paralympic level, we do sprint triathlon. So it's a 750-meter swim, 20-kilometer bike, 5-kilometer run. You have to have the same guide for the whole race. And so we swim side by side. My guide and I use a bungee cord that wraps around my upper thigh and his upper thigh, and we swim basically stroke for stroke together. And I can tell based on the tension of the tether, if I'm swimming too close to him or if I'm swimming farther away from him. Unfortunately, he's not allowed to pull me through the water. Otherwise, I would be a rocket ship in the water, because I tend to pick guides that are really good swimmers. But my guide communicates to me, which way to turn based on a series of taps. So like, my guide can tell me, that we need to pick up the pace by, tapping me on the head. He can, tell me to turn left by tapping me on the left shoulder, tell me to turn right by tapping me on the right shoulder, or that kind of, that kind of communication. And then we ride a custom built tandem bike. We obviously, communicate through, my guide, yells out, left turn, right turn, slowing, 180-degree turn, coast. We have verbal commands, but sometimes, in Paris in particular, it was so loud. The crowd energy was so electric that I actually had a hard time hearing my guide yelling from the front of the bike. So I had to rely on my knowledge of the bike course and the communication through the pedals, that being able to read the chain tension and all that, of what we needed to do. And then out on the run, we run side by side. My guide and I we use what's called a waist tether. So it's a race belt that wraps around my waist and a race belt that wraps around my guide's waist. And then we have this little 50-centimeter, basically nylon strap that goes between the two race belts, and we run side by side. And my guide can tell me, left, right, step up, step down, running at 330 per kilometer pace, or running at 540 per mile pace, or whatever whatever we need to do to get me across the finish line.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, it sounds like the bike, and then I guess secondary, the swim is where you have to have a good chemistry. How much of your training is with a guide as opposed to by yourself, or how much preparation do you guys put together to kind of have that chemistry going?
It's a lot. It's a lot. I do my best to do as much of my training outside as I possibly can. And as someone who's totally blind, if I'm training outside, if I'm riding a bike or running outside, I have to use a guide. I guess I don't have to, but if I want to come away unscathed, I should use a guide. So a lot of it is chemistry building. A lot of it is spending time with your guide and figuring out who is a good race guide. Your guide has to be able to, be stronger than you are on your strongest day when they are having a not so strong day. And so it's a lot of, in the 3 months leading into the Paralympic Games, my primary guide, Zach, and I, we trained basically I would say we trained 6 out of 7 days a week together. And it was a lot. We did a lot. We did all of our key training sessions together. We occasionally did some solo training, like if I could get out for if Zach had a specific run set that he needed to do to keep himself in peak physical shape and condition, and I had an easier run, we could do that separately. I would find another guide, but all of the cycling that we did on the tandem we did together. Because that's just such a technical aspect of the sport that we had to invest that time into being just dialed on the bike.
Yeah, and then last minute there was oops, never mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if I don't have the socks that I want for a race, I start freaking out in the morning. So I think you stayed pretty cool about the whole thing to still be able to perform. So that's amazing.
We do the best we can with what we got. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and it just it sounds just like the hundreds and 200s that Simon and I are pretty familiar with. But it's really not an if, but when is something going to change? When is the plan going to change? When are we going to have to pull an audible? When are we going to have to make a decision on whatever it might be, whether you're going to wear, your wife's socks, Simon, or if you're going to wear, somebody else's socks or whatever you're going to do.
Or Brian, your shorts.
Yeah.
Actually,
Simon has a history. He wore my shorts. He's worn Nora's Lululemon pants. Yeah,
that's true.
You got a little history going on there.
My pants ripped apart on my last race too, and I was bleeding so much. I was like, "Where's Brian when I need him?"
I in triathlon we just go no socks. So
that's okay.
I typically do that too.
We forgive you. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry. And basically any race that I do that's longer than 10 kilometers. I'm wearing socks. But no, even in like if I'm running a road race or a trail race, I'm putting socks on. Come on, like that's I know we're crazy triathletes. So,
Kyle, I got a question. If we have the Scottish Rocket, what is your nickname in triathlon?
I don't know if I have one.
Should I ask Zach? Is that who I need to ask?
I don't know. I don't even know if Zach would give me a nickname. I think the closest thing I ever came to a nickname in sport was the K train, and that was that was actually a nickname that Will Fisher gave me when he and I were doing a bunch of running together. He guided me for the Sopris runoff 4-miler, and Will and I are both bigger dudes. I'm like 180, 185 pounds, and Will's 185, 190, and we were just like a freight train rumbling downhill, and Will was just like K train coming through. so I think that's the closest nickname I've ever gotten.
All right, it might stick. I like it. I think I've heard it too through the local run club as well. So
so the other some of my teammates tried christening me Cookie or Cannoli because I have a fondness for sweet desserts, but those didn't stick. But everyone also knows me as Bubba across the across the whole spectrum. So I mean, as long as you don't call me late for dinner, I usually respond to just about anything.
Sure. And Bubba's a reference to one of your sponsors, right?
Yeah. So I've been Bubba Burger has been a really amazing partner of mine for my entire sporting career, which is great. They've been supporting me, just in many ways over the years, and I'm not able to be a professional athlete without their support. So it's been awesome to represent that company and that brand.
Man, I could use a hamburger sponsor myself. I'm always hungry.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
I always said, I was like, I got the burger sponsor. Where's the beer sponsor? So,
There you go.
so that was that's my next goal in life. It's like, hey, any local breweries want to, do a partnership or something out there. We
Sure, sure.
could have a little fun with that.
Man, I mean, I think a K-Train beer, like K-Train IPA would, just
Oh, I
sound
like
perfect
that.
on the menu, K-Train
That does
IPA.
that does sound good. Ooh, yeah. Maybe we should make this happen.
I don't know the brewery, Kyle, just to give you a heads up.
Ah, man, here, getting my hopes up. Getting my hopes up, Brian.
Hey, I appreciate you sharing your stories. Paris sounds like you just had a great experience, even with some of the stressful situations of water quality and changes of schedules and the flip flop of guides. But I'm glad you had that experience. I'm so glad that we were able to share in your story with you this evening.
Yeah.
Gosh, we wish you the best. And what's next for Kyle Coon? Where are we going to find you next?
Oh man, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I'm kind of at a point in my career where triathlon. I still might be dabbling in it. Not sure if I'm going to keep pursuing it at the Paralympic level. I'm definitely going to be staying with staying fit. Definitely going to be dipping my toe back into the road racing scene. I'm actually currently training for I've got the Houston Half Marathon on my radar in January, and then might look at maybe coming back to the Roaring Fork Valley and tackling some local road and trail races out there, and maybe get a fast road marathon in at some point in 2025. But then 2026 definitely taking a deep dive into trail running, and it's about time I tick off some ultras. So
Nice. We'll see you out there. We'll have to share your buckles with us.
absolutely.
Kyle, if you weren't doing triathlon and you had all this time, because triathlon's pretty time consuming, what would you be doing with that time? Where do you see yourself?
Oh, that's such a difficult question, because I would be doing some type of adventure sport, whether that's rock climbing or trail running or mountain running or something. I would be doing something. Rock climbing was my first love and passion. Mountain and trail running. I just love being in the outdoors. I love the mountains. I love the mountains of Colorado. That's where I plan to make my forever home at some point. Just and then probably if they had a self-driving sprinter van, you could probably find me just cruising around Colorado and the entire Mountain West. Just
That's probably not too far away. That self-driving van. That's probably
I hope
pretty
not.
soon.
So yeah, so that's goals in life. My girlfriend, me, and our pack of dogs, and a couple of guitars. That'd be fun to just hang out and drive around the world in a self-driving sprinter van.
Cool. Kyle, again, thank you so much for your time. Where can our audience find you at?
Yeah, probably easiest to find me on your social media platform of choice, i.e. Instagram or Facebook. So those are probably my two most active platforms. I'm on Instagram at Iron Kyle. It's EYERONKYLE, and then Facebook.com/Kyle Coon Speaks. Those are the two easiest ways to find and follow and check out my adventures. Or you can just check out my website, kylecoon.com. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, or want to keep a conversation going. Just shoot me an email, kyle@kylecoon.com.
Thanks again, Kyle. We appreciate your time. We'll keep an eye on all your future sporting endeavors, and I hope to see you in the Valley here pretty soon.
Oh, you know it. We'll be there soon.
Thanks, Cal.
Thank you.